Hi everyone, my name is Liam. I'm 35 and I work as a mechanic at a small auto repair shop. Just an ordinary guy, nothing special, married, no kids yet. My wife Emily and I live in the suburbs of Chicago. I decided to share my story on this channel. I guess it had just been building up inside. Maybe my experience will be useful to someone, or at least give them some food for thought. Although I won't deny it, I still don't know how to feel about what happened myself. Ashamed? Absolutely. Bitter? You bet. But do I regret it? I don't know. Really, I don't know. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go in order. Emily and I have been together since high school. She was the captain of the cheerleading squad. I was the best running back on the school team. A classic case of puppy love, all that stuff. We got married right after graduation. Many shook their heads like, "You're too young. Why rush?" But we didn't care. We loved each other. That was enough. Then I went to work. Emily enrolled in college to study design. It seemed like things were going pretty well. We rented a tiny apartment, started making plans for the future. We thought we'd be parents soon, get a dog. Just like normal people, you know? But fate had other plans. A month before defending her thesis, Emily got into an accident. A drunk driver swerved into the oncoming lane, plowing right into her car. She miraculously survived, but the injuries were too serious. A spinal fracture, paralysis of the lower extremities. The doctors could only shrug helplessly. Lord, I thought I would go insane back then. I paced the hospital corridors like a madman, begging all the gods for her to pull through. And when Emily regained consciousness and realized she would never be able to walk again, it was a nightmare. Tears, hysterics, depression. It seemed like life was over. At first we coped as best we could. I took time off work, did odd jobs at night so I could sit with my wife during the day. Emily sank into apathy, hardly reacting to anything. Sometimes she would break down, cry uncontrollably, shout for me to leave her, that she was just a burden. And I would just hug her and repeat like a broken record. "Everything will be okay, darling. We'll get through this. You just don't give up." A couple of months later, it became clear that I couldn't handle it alone. Emily needed constant care. She immediately shut down any hint of intimacy, hissing like a wildcat. "Don't even think about it. Don't you dare touch me. I'm a cripple." What can you say to that? I understood. And of course I didn't insist, although I won't lie, it was tough. After all, I'm a young, healthy guy. Anyway, Emily's mother, Carol, couldn't take it anymore. She packed her bags, kissed her husband goodbye, and announced, "I'm going to the kids. They need me." And she moved in with us. Temporarily until her daughter got back on her feet. Figuratively speaking, of course. At first I was relieved. Well, of course, some help wouldn't hurt, and Emily would be in better spirits too. And having a mother-in-law in the house, that's no big deal. We're not kids, we can handle it. Back then, I couldn't even imagine what this little venture would lead to. The first stretch of our new routine was more like a madhouse. Carol and I were scurrying around like squirrels in a wheel. Cooking, cleaning, doing procedures for Emily, plus my shifts at the auto shop. My wife was gradually thawing, starting to smile again. Although she would still break down sometimes, she could throw a tantrum over nothing or burst into tears for no reason. But overall, things were getting better. Until one day, about 6 months after the accident, I came home earlier than usual. That day, we had canceled the evening appointments at the shop, and the boss took pity on me and let me off early. Let me surprise the girls, I thought. After all, I'm always on the road. We hardly ever really talk anymore. I walked into the apartment, and there was this strange silence, as if everyone had died. Not a sound, not a rustle. I got goosebumps. I hoped nothing had happened. I rushed to the bedroom, bracing myself for the worst. And there, oh Lord, I wish I hadn't seen it. My wife, my Emily, was lying on the bed with a blank expression, and next to her, a syringe and ampules. And Carol was fussing around, hiding something in the pocket of her robe. She saw me and froze like a deer in the headlights. But she quickly regained her composure. "Liam, why are you home so early? Did something happen?" It was like something inside me snapped. A terrible suspicion began to creep into my soul. Slowly, emphatically, I asked, "Carol, what's going on here? What is this shit?" My mother-in-law looked embarrassed, averted her gaze. She mumbled incoherently, "Nothing special. Pain medication for Emily. You know how hard it is for her?" I exploded. I rushed at Carol, grabbed her by the shoulders, and turned her to face me. Pain medication? You doped her up to the gills. She's a vegetable. Look at her. What the hell, Carol? My wife really was out of it. Her gaze was glassy, unfocused, like a doll or a robot. I started shaking with fear and anger. What had this damn mother-in-law of mine dreamed up? Had she decided to finish off her daughter? Carol wriggled out of my grasp. She hissed angrily, with some incomprehensible resentment. You can say that, but you're one to talk. You should be thanking me for giving her any pain relief at all. Otherwise, she'd be screaming her head off all day long, driving us both crazy. I was taken aback. I even recoiled in surprise. What was this all about? How dare she? You've completely lost it? I rasped. Shut up, you hear? And don't you dare dope her up again. If you want to help, help, but I won't let you torture her. Anyway, we had a huge falling out. We yelled so loud that the windows were shaking. It's a good thing Emily wasn't with it. Otherwise, we would have finished her off completely with our screaming. In the end, Carol slammed the door and left. She tossed out as a parting shot. Sort it out yourselves then. And I was left alone with my wife. I sat by her side, holding her hand. I begged her to forgive me, promised that everything would be okay from now on. And I just thought, Lord, where are we heading? And how did it come to this? That her own mother is willing to poison her daughter. After that fight, Carol stayed away for a few days. She ignored my calls, didn't respond to messages, and I couldn't leave the house. Emily was like a vegetable. I could barely bring her around. But I had no desire to deal with my mother-in-law. I was too angry and confused. We probably would have continued muddling through like that. But then the thing I feared most happened. Emily started having seizures. She was writhing in bed, choking on her moans. I somehow managed to give her a sedative injection. Thank God Carol had left the medications. But it became clear that I couldn't handle it alone. I had to call my mother-in-law. She arrived surprisingly quickly. She gave Emily and me a strange look, as if assessing us. And she asked, smiling wryly, "Well, have you had enough? Decided you could handle it yourselves?" I clenched my teeth. I didn't bother snapping back. It would be useless. I just nodded at Emily. "Help her, Carol, please, for your daughter's sake." She snorted, but she approached the bed, leaned over Emily. She felt her forehead, listened to her heart. Then she instructed, "Bring the medication. We'll have to start an IV drip before it gets really bad." I didn't argue. I went and got the medicine, helped my mother-in-law set up the IV. Emily gradually calmed down, grew still. She fell asleep, the first normal, healthy sleep in days. Carol and I were left in the living room. We sat in silence, not looking at each other, exhausted, drained. Finally, my mother-in-law said hoarsely, "Sorry, Liam, I went overboard with the pain meds. I just wanted to help so she wouldn't suffer." I nodded. I understood. For a mother, there's nothing worse than seeing her child suffer, even a grown child, even a willful and stubborn one. I replied, staring at the floor, "Water under the bridge, Carol. Thank you for helping. We wouldn't have managed without you." She sighed. She came up, awkwardly patted my shoulder. "I know how hard it is for you. Hang in there, Liam. Together, we'll figure everything out." And then it was like a dam burst inside me. I buried my forehead in my mother-in-law's shoulder, dissolving into silent sobs, clinging to her sweater, and I whispered over and over through the spasms, "I'm so tired, Carol, so damn tired." She stroked my hair. Awkwardly, unaccustomed, like a child, she murmured something soothing in my ear, and I suddenly felt something strange, as if we were family, as if this was my haven, my island of safety amidst all this nightmare. I didn't even notice when I hugged her back. I pressed against her, greedily breathing in her scent. Carol shuddered, tensed up, but she didn't pull away. And suddenly I had a crazy thought. How nice it would probably be to bury my face in her neck, to warm myself, lose myself, if only for a moment to stop being strong. The spell dissipated as quickly as it had washed over me. I recoiled, mumbling incoherent apologies. Thank God my mother-in-law didn't dwell on it. She just nodded and went to the bedroom to check on Emily. But I knew. I felt that something irreparable had happened, that this was the first step into an abyss from which I would never escape. It only got worse after that. Carol and I were alone together more and more often. It just happened. Sometimes Emily was asleep after her medication. Sometimes I came home early, and my mother-in-law was too tired to go back to her place. At first, we just talked. About nothing, the weather, work. Sometimes about Emily, of course. Carol shared memories, what her daughter was like as a child. Cheerful, feisty, with constantly scraped knees. I listened, smiling sadly. It had been a good time. Carefree, bright, unlike now. Then it somehow started happening naturally. Carol would make me coffee when I stayed up late working on paperwork. I would massage her shoulders if she was completely exhausted. It felt so natural, so familiar, as if we really were one family. Emily was gradually coming around too. She started joking, taking an interest in things. I was delighted. Had she finally gotten some relief? I fussed over her like a mother hen, brought her flowers, helped around the house. Carol would watch approvingly, but sometimes a shadow would pass over her face. She would turn away, biting her lip. It would have gone on like that. We had gotten used to it, settled into a routine. But one day, Emily brought up the subject. It was time for me to go back to being a husband, she said. We could manage on our own. We weren't kids anymore. Carol hesitated, looking at me helplessly, and something inside me clenched up. I blurted out without thinking, "Mom, that's nonsense. Where would you go? What if you have another episode? No way, just stay for now. Emily and I will feel better knowing you're here." My wife raised her eyebrows in surprise. She glanced at me, at Carol. She snorted skeptically. Well, listen to you now. You used to not know where to look to avoid your mother-in-law, and now you're urging her to stay. You two must have really become buddies, huh?" Carol flushed, looked away, and I suddenly got angry, as if I had been insulted honestly. I snapped, not expecting it from myself. "What's wrong with that? By the way, if it weren't for Carol, you'd have been committed ages ago. You should be thanking her for having a mother who's worth her weight in gold, not a good-for-nothing." A ringing silence hung in the room. Emily stared at me with wide eyes. Carol nervously crumpled the hem of her robe, and I sat there, breathing heavily, gradually realizing that I had said too much. But I wasn't going to apologize. I was sick of everyone always deciding things for me. "What, nothing to say? Going to tell me I'm wrong?" I said stubbornly. My wife blinked in bewilderment. She shook her head, said quietly, "No, Liam, you're right, it's just unexpected, I guess. You two really have gotten close." I shrugged. I glanced at my mother-in-law. Like, say something, will you? Carol cleared her throat awkwardly. "Emily, darling, what grudges are there between family? We're managing, and that's the main thing. Liam is right. I'd better stay for now. We'll see what happens later." My wife sighed. She nodded submissively, leaning back against the pillows. She said wearily, "Okay, Mom, whatever you say. I guess you know best." And she turned towards the wall, making it clear the conversation was over. And Carol and I exchanged a look. A long, probing look, as if asking, what was that all about? Where is this all headed? I was the first to look away. I escaped to the kitchen, to the fridge, to cool off, to calm down. My heart was racing wildly. My mouth was dry. And a crazy thought kept pounding in my head. What are we doing? Where is this strange, frightening intimacy leading us? The denouement came a couple of weeks later. We had just gotten a bit of a breather. Emily was feeling better. She had even started sitting up in bed a little. I perked up. Had we finally turned a corner? I let my guard down, got careless. That evening, we stayed up late. Carol was puttering around in the kitchen, humming under her breath. I was fiddling with some paperwork in the living room, working out the monthly budget. Out of the corner of my eye, I kept glancing at my mother-in-law, statuesque, cozy, in a soft house robe with tousled hair. My heart ached with a strange, tickling tenderness. She must have felt my gaze. She turned around, smiling inquiringly. "What's got you down? A lot of work." I shook my head. I put the papers aside, stretching until my joints cracked. "No, it's nothing. I was just thinking. It's strange somehow, how quiet it is. Peaceful." Carol chuckled understandingly. She came over and sat down on the couch next to me. "You're right, it's like the storm has passed. I can hardly believe it." We were silent for a while, staring at the same spot. I could feel her shoulder right next to mine. So warm, so soft. A strange yearning spread through my chest. "You know, Carol, I never did say," I began awkwardly. "Thank you for everything. If it weren't for you—" My mother-in-law waved me off. She lightly squeezed my knee. as if by accident. "Stop it, Liam. I promised, didn't I? We'd get through this. You, me, Emily. We're one family now." I covered her hand with mine. I looked into her eyes, searchingly, intensely. "Really? You think so?" Carol shuddered. She licked her lips, looking somehow guilty. "Well, of course, silly. What did you think?" And then it hit me. I leaned towards her, breathing hot against her face. I rasped right into her lips. "I don't know, Carol. I just don't know anything anymore." And after that, everything was like a feverish delirium. Just hazy images, sensations, the searing touch of lips, ragged breaths, frenzied tenderness of caresses, the silkiness of skin under my fingers, gasping whispers, crumpled fabric. Reality shattered, swam, leaving only a whirlwind of maddening emotions. We came to our senses only when the bed creaked in the next room. Emily. Damn, we had completely forgotten about her. We recoiled from each other like we had been scalded. Carol sobbed, hiding her face in her palms. "Oh God, what have we done?" I groaned. I clutched my hair, squeezing my eyes shut in pain. "I'm sorry. Carol, I'm so sorry. I don't know what came over me." She shook her head. She stood up, wrapping herself in her torn robe. "No, Liam, it's my fault. I lost my head. I got carried away. I failed my daughter, my husband." I flinched as if slapped. Yes, that's right. Her husband. Somewhere miles away, her husband was waiting for her. And I was here. Lord, what was I doing? I jumped up, pacing around the room. Where could I run? Where could I hide from the shame? Carol looked at me sympathetically, biting her lip. She came up and hugged me by the shoulders. "Shh, Liam, calm down. Nothing happened, you hear? Nothing. We just got carried away. It happens to everyone." I shook my head vehemently. "Like hell got carried away? I cheated on my wife with her mother in the next room." "We have to leave," Carol mumbled feverishly. "Leave before it's too late, before it gets worse." I looked up sharply. "No, don't. Emily needs you. You're needed by me." She shook her head. She stroked my cheek, tenderly, bitterly. "Sweet Liam, silly, silly boy. You know it can't be like that. It's wrong." And she went to her room, and I was left sitting on the floor, crushed, drained, understanding that something irreparable had happened, and that I would never be the same again. The next morning Carol left. She said she had urgent business, that it wouldn't be for long. We saw her off in silence. What was there to say? Emily was puzzled, but she didn't ask any questions. She must have sensed that something was off. For the first while, I couldn't find my place. I walked around like a zombie, tormented by insomnia. Memories tormented me, plagued me with a vague, painful yearning. I was ashamed to look my wife in the eye. It seemed like she would instantly understand, see my filthiness. But Emily seemed not to notice. She smiled, joked, made plans. She said she had a feeling she would be back on her feet soon. We'd go out somewhere, get some fresh air. I nodded woodenly, averted my gaze. I just physically couldn't pretend that everything was okay. The days passed in a dreary, monotonous sequence. Without Carol, the house felt empty, started to seem alien. I wandered from corner to corner, not knowing what to do with myself. And more often, I caught myself thinking, was this really the right thing? Maybe I was wrong to let her go? I should have persuaded her to stay, to work everything out. Emily grew melancholy too. She pined for her mother, though she put on a brave face. I could see. She was depressed, staring into space for hours on end, and my heart ached with tenderness and guilt. Lord, my poor girl. What was I doing? How could I have let her down like this? The decision came suddenly. One evening I just sat down on the edge of the bed, took Emily's hand. I said hoarsely, desperately, forgive me if you can." She raised her eyebrows in surprise. She asked warily, "For what, Liam? What are you talking about?" I swallowed hard. My eyelids burned, my throat constricted with a spasm. "For everything. For not protecting you. For not being there when you needed me. For betraying you." I couldn't go on. I doubled over, sobbing convulsively. And Emily just looked and looked. Then she pulled me towards her. She hugged me, pressed me to her chest. "Oh, you silly thing. What are you talking about? It's me who should be asking for forgiveness. I fell on you like a ton of bricks. I have no strength left." I shook my head vehemently. "Like a ton of bricks, my ass. My beloved, my desired one. No one closer." I rasped through the spasms. I love you, you hear? No matter what. Emily sighed. She kissed the top of my head. And I love you, Liam, I do. And in the morning I called Carol. I hesitated for a long time, the phone burning my hand. But it was time to pay the piper, I suppose. I said firmly into the receiver, "Hi, it's me. We need to talk." Chapter 7. We met at a park nearby. Carol arrived first, waiting on a bench. Seeing me, she got up, took a few steps towards me, but she stopped, frozen in indecision. I approached silently. I sat down next to her, staring at one spot. My throat felt like it was being scraped raw. Carol looked at me expectantly, crumpling a handkerchief in her hands. Finally, she said softly, "Why did you call me, Liam? You shouldn't have." I shook my head. How could I not? I needed to. It was necessary, for all of us. I said hoarsely, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. Damn, I don't know what came over me." She shook her head. She stroked my arm, lightly, almost weightlessly. "Don't blame yourself. The devil led us astray. It happens to everyone. We're weak people, Liam." I gave a bitter chuckle. "Yeah, weak. Only some people get away with that weakness, while others have to deal with the consequences for the rest of their lives." I asked, not looking at her. "So what are we going to do now? How do we move forward?" Carol sighed. She turned away, clasping her hands tightly. "I don't know, Liam. Really, I don't know. Emily, oh God, I betrayed my own daughter. How can I look her in the eye?" I was silent. What could I say? I couldn't find my place either from the guilt and shame, but deep down, in the deepest depths, a strange, timid hope flickered. What if we could? What if we could overcome, forgive, start anew? I asked, afraid to believe. Do you want to be with me, no matter what?" Carol's eyes widened fearfully. She shook her head, barely holding back tears. "Liam, my dear, how can you not understand? We can't. It's wrong. I'm almost an old woman, and you need to live, to love." It was like a weight lifted off my soul. I cupped her face in my hands, looked into her eyes, demandingly, greedily. "To hell with it all! You hear me, Carol? To hell with age, propriety. Lord, I love you. I didn't expect it myself, but there you have it," she sobbed. She buried her face in my chest, shaking with sobs. "Liam, Liam, my silly fool, is this really love? Just a passing fancy, a spell?" I pulled her to me. I stroked her hair, kissed her tear-stained cheeks. "No, not a fancy. Love, Carol, the real thing. Forbidden, strange, but love." We sat embracing until dark, silent, each lost in our own thoughts, about the difficult, the wrong, but also the inevitable. Then Carol left. She said, to visit someone, to think things over, and I went home. Back to Emily, back to my familiar life. Only everything seemed to have shifted out of place, changed, turned upside down. I know we have a lot of pain ahead of us, explanations, resentments, incomprehension. Emily will rage, cry, curse me. I'll accept all her reproaches. I deserve it. I earned it. But I'll do everything so that she doesn't suffer, so that she feels loved, needed. Because I really do love her, purely, tenderly, like family, like a part of myself, forever, until the end. And Carol, well, maybe I really am crazy, a pervert, a moral freak, but I want to be with her. I want to fall asleep and wake up next to her. I want to touch her, to love her, to finally know what real happiness is. We have a long road ahead of us, difficult, thorny, with no guarantees of success. But we'll try, we'll definitely try, because there's no other way. I can't. I don't want to live half-heartedly. Thank you to everyone who listened to my confession, to those who weren't afraid to look into the depths of my soul. Believe me, your compassion is priceless to me right now. It gives me the strength to keep going, to not give up, to not let my hands drop. Someone may condemn me, may snort disdainfully. Ugh, how disgusting. To leave your disabled wife for her mother, what could be more vile? And they would be right in their own way. I'm not justifying myself either. I'm just stating it as it is. Without embellishment, without omission. Others may understand. They may sympathize, wish me luck. Like, go for it, guy. The heart wants what it wants. We're all sinners. And I'll be grateful to them too, because in our situation, any kind of support is important. Any kind glance, any kind word. As for Carol and me, we'll try, with all our might, until our last breath. Because not trying is no longer an option. Because we've hidden in corners for too long, cowering in fear for too long. Is it difficult? Scary? Absolutely. But I believe we'll make it. We'll stand firm. We'll go through all the trials. We'll forge our own little forbidden happiness. Thank you, friends. Thank you for hearing me out, for not turning away, for not disowning me. Forgive me if it was rambling and muddled. It had built up. It had simmered. But now it's letting up, little by little, grudgingly. But it's letting up. And I'm moving forward, into a new life, into the unknown. With my head held high no matter what awaits me. I'm going forward and I believe. In myself, in Carol and me, in the eternal values, love, family, loyalty, and let the whole world wait. We'll manage. Now I know that for sure. This story is definitely interesting and tragic at the same time. You never know how life will turn out. We have many similar to this and at the same time different interesting stories on our Storytelling Podcast channel. So subscribe so you don't miss new stories. And also don't forget to like, share with your friends, and comment on what you liked in the stories. See you soon.